Welcome to another interview. Laura, welcome. I know Laura from my program, Find Your Truth, to help ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witness women find out who they are outside of the organization. And Laura was in one of my last groups. So thank you so much for coming on my YouTube channel. And Laura has such an awesome story, and I wanted everyone to hear her story. So Laura, if you can just walk us back to your childhood of pre-JW days, because I know you weren't born in. So if you can walk us down that path and then kind of transition into when you got baptized and how that all came about.
Well, Vivian, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
It's a new for me to kind of be interviewed on a channel. Yeah, I thought I'm ready to do this.
Yes, you are.
I was born Catholic, so to speak, and I'm the fourth child of three older sisters. My mom was a single mom, and she raised us. My two older sisters kind of knew my dad. I didn't know him at all, or my sister just above me. And so we were raised Catholic, and we went to church on Sundays, and my mom knew her Catholic Bible, and so she had a love for the Bible, and she also raised me to have a love for the Bible because she would read it on her bed and I would listen to it. And I just loved all the different, books, but a little bit afraid of when we would read Revelation. And and then one day she got disillusioned by the church, and then she got in contact with some Jehovah's Witnesses door to door, and they offered to give us a Bible study with our neighbor, myself, and my mom. So all three of us studied at our house, and they were telling us that it's the Great Tribulation is coming. This was in end of 73, and then 74 came, and we were pretty much involved, going to the meetings, going out and field service. And whereas our neighbor kind of faded, didn't want to study anymore. So it was just my mom and I. And then it got to the point where they were telling us to get baptized.
And can I ask what happened to your sisters? Why didn't they study?
Well, my two older sisters were already at the point where they had moved out the house. They were married, and one was in another state, but she would come back and forth. And then the other one got married, and she just hung out on Sundays at our house. And my other sister that lived with us, she was very shy, so she didn't even want nothing to do. Every time they would come over, she would run to the bedroom. The minute they left, she'd come back out. So she didn't want to study, and she kind of kept neutral the whole time. She let us be Jehovah's Witnesses in a sense, no judgment, and one way or the other. And she kind of just kept herself neutral around the house.
Okay, so here you are, you and your mom were studying. How old were you at this point?
I think it was like 11, 12-ish, because I got baptized when I was 13. But also my aunt, who lived 2 cities down, her next door neighbor was also a Jehovah's Witness. She was renting that place, and she had some kids, and she started to share literature with my aunt. And then my aunt started giving my mom some of the literature. And I think that's how my mom got a little bit more introduced to Jehovah's Witnesses. And she had that big Babylon the Great book. And I remember looking at the pictures and, seeing those dragons and getting really scared about it, reading it, and didn't quite understand it. But my mom would read every book that they gave my aunt. My aunt would give to my mom an extra one. And my mom would just read it, and it would be on her bed. And I would read it too, not knowing what I was reading, but I enjoyed it. And so then my aunt was also studying too. But again, she didn't get baptized. She had an unbelieving husband, and her kids, they just didn't do it. And then so she stopped being a witness, or at least studying to be a witness. But my mom and I, we right away went to a meeting. I think the first month that we started studying, we went to the Kingdom Hall for the first time, and the talk was about Armageddon. So it was like, whoa. And it was just on the cusp of 1975. Wow. So although we didn't know there was all this history before 1975 kind of rushing to that date, we just felt it was so funny, because I remember the lady who studied with us said, just think of it as a clock. She goes, and it's like just before the alarm clock, and it goes tick, 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 tick. She goes, it just before it goes tick, and the alarm goes off. She goes, that's where we're at. We're right in that, just before the tick. And I remember her giving that illustration. I was like, whoa, we need to get baptized. So my mom and I did get baptized together.
Talk about pressure. Wow, that's a lot of pressure to be putting on a mom and a daughter to go to that little tick. And then it's like, sounds like it was the whole world was just going to explode, which is kind of the concept of Armageddon.
Yeah, it was funny because when they, go to the meeting, okay, we just did it. My mom did it and I just followed her. I was a Velcro child. Everywhere my mom went, I had to
I
go.
never heard that concept before, but I love it. The analogy of a Velcro child.
I know times there was like, you stay here. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I was always next to her because being the youngest. And yeah, so I was always with her. And so, I think if she would have jumped over the cliff, I would have jumped over the cliff too. I mean, just I'm going with her. And I think because I got really into the studies and she did too, but I was answering questions and I kind of, I knew how to study because I was a kid. I knew how to answer questions for school. And it was just for me, it was like an academic exercise. Because where I grew up in the projects where you're kind of isolated on the third floor. And so any stimulation, we were like blocks and blocks away from any kind of library where you had to catch the bus to go into the city to get the library. And so there was no except school. And this was now an opportunity right after school to learn about things, to have, someone talk to me, give us attention. And I was all for it.
Because it was just you and your mom at this point. So being at the Kingdom Hall, you got not only your mom's attention, but all the other witnesses' attention too, being a child. Because at this point,
go ahead.
At this point, your stepdad hadn't come into the picture.
My who?
Your second dad.
No, he wasn't really my second dad. He was my mom's boyfriend. And
okay.
And he had his wife had passed away when his kids were like 1 and 2.
Okay.
And he was from the same town that my mom was, but they both migrated over to California from New Mexico. And so that's how they kind of met. So I think when I was about 2 years old, or maybe about 2 or 2.5, they got together and he would come stay with my mom for a little bit, but he'd go back home because he had 2 daughters. And his mother was watching the children. His mom and dad were watching the children, and they lived in the same city. But he was very much a fatherly figure to me. And being the youngest of all the girls, he had 2 daughters. We were at a family of 4 daughters. I was the youngest, so everybody kind of babied me. And even where my mom and her boyfriend would go, I was Velcro to them too. And he was just very sweet and very kind and very loving to me. And I enjoyed that.
And he didn't mind that your mom and you were studying?
At the time when we started studying, it was sort of like the time my mom had broken up with him. So it was a period of time when my mom was with him and life was really good. And then all of a sudden they broke up. I didn't understand why they broke up, but later on I found out they broke up because they were building a life together. They were getting ready to get married and move into a new house where all the daughters would go into. And he just backed out of that. And my mom got pissed off at him and she broke it off completely. So my mom was kind of disillusioned by the church, by the fact that she could have had a really nice future with him because he was very much, he was a breadwinner, and my mom was in that stage where the wife stays home, husband makes the money, and he was making good money. He had a good job. He was a foreman, and he had businesses. So we would have been set if we would have moved into that house. And she helped him build that house, get from the foundation, pick the tile, pick the things. It was a 4-bedroom, so there was intentions for all of us to go in there. But the day it was time to move, he moved in, came to my mom's house, and said, I'm really exhausted moving. His mother and father were supposed to go back to New Mexico. They didn't. They moved in. And my mom said, that's it. You bye. So she was disillusioned. So it was prime for my mom to, be introduced to a paradise. You could have your own house, all of these wonderful promises. And it's going to just happen when it's almost there.
So they caught her at this very vulnerable and precious time where she was just left. It was just you two together, and then the witnesses came into the space, and the need to get baptized was probably extremely urgent because it was 1975 and Armageddon was coming. So you guys got baptized together. I know that.
Yeah, we got baptized at our circuit assembly just before the the district convention. So
Mhm.
actually got baptized May 25th this month. And it would have been, I
Wow.
think, 48 years I would have been baptized.
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
So yeah, so it was a big deal for us to get, and it was a big deal because I right away came from zero knowing anything about Jehovah's Witnesses to within a year getting baptized and being one of the model teenagers. So I didn't have all that garbage, being born in and and being,
Mhm.
introduced and kind of like, well, it's the same old, same old. It was all fresh and new to me. So I was excited about it, excited about going out in service, excited about everything that they offered me.
And you don't remember what you felt like when the holidays and birthdays and stuff was taken away from you, because you also had those memories as well, and it
Yeah,
was
it was funny because, I didn't feel like they were taken away from me. I felt like because I was indoctrinated from zero to indoctrination. So I was thoroughly, indoctrinated and brainwashed to realize, you read the scriptures, God wanted you to do this. I was very much, even as a little kid, very religious. I used to carry this little, um, Guadalupe Mary,
well, yes, yes,
shell,
yes.
and I would put her by me and I'd pray to her. We had these beautiful pictures that would light up on our wall,
You were
before you go to
such a
bed.
good little Catholic girl.
I was, but I couldn't get at the time. I couldn't get my first Holy Communion because I was too young. I went with my sister and she did it, but then by the time it was time for me to do it, that's when we met the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so it was sort of like, it felt like I was doing my first Holy Communion in a sense. I was getting baptized. I was doing something religious, moving me more towards God. And so I think I just replaced it.
Okay,
I wasn't doing my first Holy Communion. I was getting baptized, even though I knew I was baptized as a baby, as a Catholic.
so you were 12 years old getting baptized with your mom?
Yeah, I was 13. I was just,
13? Okay.
yeah, I was just 13. Mhm.
So I'm sure your mom was probably super proud of you because it was just you
Oh yeah,
two.
everybody was. And they were hugging you. I mean, they love bombed me the first time we came to the Kingdom
Of
Hall.
course.
They love bomb me when I go out and fill service. The sister, we switched over from from this young two women that were pioneering, but then they had to work late in the evening, and then she passed us over to a pioneer, and she was known in the congregation. She was known in the territory. She had been pioneering for a long, long time. She had like 8 kids or 7 kids that were
Mhm.
all strong Jehovah's Witnesses. And so she was known in the territory. And then she started to study with us, and she had this big giant car. And I used to love to get in that car, big giant back seat. You can kind of swim in it. And she'd pick me up to go out and service. She'd bring me back. We'd when I went out, the brothers would take us for ice cream. I mean, it was great. I had attention. I had people. I had things to do on weekends. I was busy and I loved it. Keep me busy, keep me learning, give me books. And that was great. I was like, I was in a candy store.
Wow, this is very interesting that you just like loved everything about being a witness technically.
I did.
It didn't sound
So
like
so
you
when it
had
came
any
to
bad
celebrating,
experience.
yeah, so
Yeah.
when came to having, giving up the birthdays and all that, I had decided, my mom didn't say you can't celebrate. I knew I wasn't supposed to do those anymore because that's what I was learning.
Hmm.
And so my mom said, we're not doing it. I'm like, yeah, we're not doing it, kind of thing.
Ah, that's funny. So you were totally fine not celebrating the holidays, and then as you got older, tell us the stories. Like you entered high school, and I know that you went off to college. You were one of the first people in your family that went off to college.
Yeah. Well, when I started, they had me as sort of like model tween and teen in the Kingdom Hall. So I was always on the stage. I actually had to do an interview at the Circuit Assembly. And I think even having that experience in Circuit Assembly, I started to realize how fake the interviews are, but because you're so young, you just do it. And I think I was quickly taught how to have that cognitive dissonance, kind of like to know something's not right, but dismiss it. And so when you do it so many times, you just learn to do it naturally. And I think that was the issue with me. I dismissed, and I put on the back burner.
But
And so,
that's typical, like instinctual gut feelings, you ignore them. That's like part of being a JW. The critical thinking is out the
mhm.
door. You don't trust your instincts. That's all out the door. I actually wanted to go back and ask you, because I know that you got into the organization at that critical time of 1975. Do you remember what happened as the years went on and it became like 1980 and Armageddon hadn't come? Was there a certain, like, what were, I'm so curious 'cause I have no idea right now. Please tell me what did they say?
I will tell you exactly, it's that tick, 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 tick. We would go out in service and there was tons of kids out there too. And they would say, oh, what are you going to do? We're going to probably have to eat bugs and we're going to, that's all we talked about in field service. How are we going to survive in the Great Tribulation?
You're gonna
Are we going
eat
to eat,
bugs? Is that what you
we're going to eat
said?
bugs? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Are we going to live here? Are we going to live there? And as we went in field service, they would say, that's going to be my house.
Of course.
That's gonna be my house. Because we were poor. So every house, we worked in the hills, that's my house. Oh, that's gonna be my house. You know, but what happened was, I remember I didn't realize that there was, like I said, all the hoopla leading up to that. But all of a sudden, 75 came and went. It was supposed to be happening like in October. We got baptized in May. So we thought, ooh, we're
Okay.
good.
You got the
It
golden
was
ticket.
very,
You're gonna
but
pass.
but then it started to not be so talked about.
Okay.
It started to get quiet, hush, hush, hush. And then all of a sudden we had a special event, because we would have our circuit assemblies, we'd have our district assemblies, and then we had a special event every once in a while in another neighboring city in their convention hall. And this was where Brother Fred Franz gave a talk. And they said, oh, there's a governing body, he's coming to talk. And at that time, it wasn't just the 8, it was the 144, whoever was the remnant. So, but he was part of the governing body. And we were like, whoa, we get to actually see a governing body. So we went there and they featured him and he gave a talk, and I think he had a visual impairment. So, and everybody could say, oh yeah, he knows the scriptures from the heart and he just reads them off and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. So I took on this job that I would take notes, because I was a great note taker, a great reader, great note taker. So I would take notes at every assembly, and then I'd hand copy them for the older sisters in the congregation.
Oh
So they would have the notes of the scriptures. So I would remember all this stuff, and so I started taking the notes, and he was trying to explain why Armageddon didn't happen in 75. And so his explanation was, it's 6,000 years of man's creation, in the fall of October 1975. However, we don't know how long from the time he was created to the time Eve was created. Again, that little gap that they always do. So that would actually start the 6,000, the end of that 6,000 years. And so we don't know. He says, but he kept saying pretty soon, very soon, very soon, very soon. Because, he says, he said, was giving all these explanations. Jehovah wouldn't let him be totally by himself. Probably he was in the process of doing this, cultivating the ground. He was busy, and then he started missing, and wanted a mate. And that's when Jehovah created Eve. He says, so that's the gap between 75 and the Great Tribulation. I remember that so distinctly, that he said,
wow. You have such
there,
a you
that
have
was
such
a
a
twist.
photogenic memory, photographic memory of just absolutely everything that he says during that convention.
Yeah, because I took note. I took
What was
notes
your
and I drew the
reaction?
drawing.
Wait, how old were you at this point? Like 16?
I probably was 14, 15.
You were a 14-year-old girl taking notes at the district convention and giving them to the elderly sisters in the congregation about such a crazy topic of why Armageddon hadn't come. What was
And I was explaining it to them, the ones who still didn't understand it.
wow, a 14-year-old girl. So how are you actually feeling about it?
I just took it as, okay, 6,000 years, there's a gap now, we just gotta wait. And then 80,
Wow.
and then, tell us to sit, how long,
Oh, I love it.
But I really didn't think I was gonna, get to 2000 year, 2000. I really thought I was going to, in my youth, not even reached 21. I really thought high school, because we still would go back to field service and say, oh yeah, you're not even going to be in high school. You're not even going to graduate. And then sure
course.
enough, I got close to graduation and I'm like, okay, yeah, I got to do something now, you know? So I had
Exactly.
to think about that because my mom, because my dad wasn't in our life, we were on welfare. And then when he died when I was 7, they told my mom, that we can now get, because he was a veteran, we can get veterans and we get survivors, which is Social Security. So we had that, so my mom didn't work and I went to school. And so I was able to get the veterans and the Social Security. But there was a catch in the Social Security that once you stop going to school, you're no longer eligible for any of that. So if I turned 18 and wasn't in school, it was zero. I would get zero. And we were using that to survive. That was our rent, that was our food, that was everything. So there was pressure on me to go to school. And so I had to figure out, I had to, put a spin on it. And I convinced myself, well, I'll go to a JC college first and maybe get a trade. But I hated secretarial work, I hated typing, I hated all of that stuff, office work. So I just took 2 years of the pre-ready, and I ended up getting my associate degree in. I did three diplomas because I was just busy, busy, busy. And I got accepted to go to, because I was taking all this. I love science. I was taking all the science classes. So they told me, why don't you transfer over to nursing? And I said, okay. So I started taking all the chemistry and the math courses and the science courses and anatomy and physiology. And so I was able to still get my veterans and my Social Security, and everybody kind of knew that I was doing that. So I continued to um to get, my government paycheck. They never said you got to go work, they were like encouraged me to live off the government,
Wow.
while yeah.
So that is so rare because we both know that education is a big, extra education is a big no in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So you had to go to school to provide for yourself and for your mom. And your
Yeah.
mom probably didn't give you a hard time. Did the Jehovah's Witnesses give you a hard time about that?
No, because at the time
That's great.
they weren't really pushing that you don't have to go to school,
Hmm.
but they weren't pushing you should go to school. It was go and get a trade. It was starting to move into get a trade. So if you
Okay,
went to the JC, it was okay, but you couldn't go to the university
got
from
it.
the very beginning because that meant you're going to move away. I was living at home, so I went to a JC that's only like 20 minutes away from our house. And but talking to the counselor, they said, well, you can go to nursing. I thought, yeah, I can go to nursing. Okay, that's okay, because I used to volunteer at the circuit assemblies with the nurse, and she was a nurse and she was a witness. So I thought, okay, I could be a nurse. So I was taking the courses, but then I had to take then I had an eye injury, and I was accepted to UC Berkeley into the nursing program, but then I had to miss a semester. That put me a year behind. When I was in that year behind, I went back to the JC college and I worked for I took some courses. Again, I was hired as a note taker in the Disabled Student Center. So I took notes for the deaf. I was
Wow.
really good at that. So they gave me all this NCR paper, not copies, it was like 3 copies of carbon paper, and they'd give me chunks. So I would use that to take meeting notes again and
Oh
just
my
tear them up and give to the
gosh.
sisters.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
I was the official note taker for everybody. They used to remember, Laura, can you take these? Did you take notes? I said, oh yeah, you know, and I would give them notes.
So you decided you didn't want to be a nurse. What
No, I didn't
happened
want to
after
be a
that?
nurse. But then I decided I wanted to go into a different path, and that was at a state university. And again, it was close to home. I can commute there. It was considered a commuter college.
Hmm.
And so I went there and I thought, okay, I'll get my bachelor's in that. But as I was going there, I realized your bachelor's, you still couldn't get a job in that field. You had to go and get your master's and your license, your credentials. But you can do that all through your master's program. And again, as long as I went to school, I was able to get all, the veterans and the Social Security. So I went with that. And then also I did so well at the JC that I won all these scholarships. I
Oh,
won like a Bank of America scholarship. I won
wow.
some scholarships that were on campus. And so I was able to pay I had a total ride uh
Wow.
all the way. And then in the mat then when they accepted me, and I was able to get another scholarship through that. So I didn't have to pay for my school at all. It was a free, it was a free, I finished with no loans. So,
Wow, it's amazing.
and so that was really good. So then, and then because it was such a high demand job that I got all my degrees and credentials, I was working, I did 2 internships, one in the hospital and one in the schools. And then they hired me while I was still finishing up my master's degree program. And then I went right away into school and had a full-time job.
And what was your title?
I was a speech language pathologist with the school
Wow.
district. But what was interesting was the other thing that I did to get to sort of combat the fact that I was now going into, to the bachelor's degree program. And when I
Exactly.
realized I was going to my master's, I decided I'm going to pioneer.
I was gonna
How
say,
can
you are so worldly for going to taking on all that education. Gosh,
No, but I balanced it off with pioneering.
pioneering, of course, of course, of course.
So 2 days out of the week, I always worked my schedule. So I always had 2 days out of the week. And I would tell them, I said, yeah, I'm getting paid to go to school, my scholarships, and I'm getting paid to go to school. So I'm going to give back Jehovah 2 days and the weekend. So I was going to school and pioneering.
Wow.
And that was pretty much my life. And
Wow, I was
then,
gonna say, you didn't have a life.
no, I didn't. School enough, you didn't have a life because it was pretty demanding. But I also, I pioneered there. And then I was getting bored though, being in the English congregation. So I switched over to our Spanish congregation. We had moved when I was about 15, we had moved from the projects because it was so drug infested and it was pretty scary there. People were shooting each other, and it was a
Wow.
lot of things I witnessed that were
Wow.
pretty scary. And so we begged my mom, my sister and I, we begged my mom, come on, please, we need to move out. I don't care. She will, oh, Jehovah protect us. I'm like, I'm
Not
like, no,
happening.
I don't want to be here. So we moved, and so happened we moved on the same block as our Kingdom Hall, and Jehovah provided. But what happened was we had a car, but when we parked in front of our house, they stole our car and totaled it. So
What? They
we
stole your car that was parked in front of the house and totaled
yes,
it.
we used to have we had our car in the projects, and it
Wow.
was fine. The minute we moved out of the projects and moved into a neighborhood, they stole our car, totaled it. So we had no car, but it was okay. We could just walk 2 doors down to the Kingdom Hall.
Oh,
Jehovah
that's
provides.
perfect.
There was a Spanish congregation, and then the people in front of us, also in the block that we lived in, I think all the Spanish people started renting in front of us from the Spanish congregation. So we would go on Tuesday, Thursdays to our meeting. They would go Wednesday, Fridays. We'd see them always walking, and they say, Laura, hermana Laura. They would come and say, why don't you come over? We need a pioneer. We need a pioneer. And the only reason I switched because I wanted to do something different. But when I was signing up for the graduate programs, they were during my English meeting nights.
Oh
And I
boy.
realized Spanish congregation doesn't meet on my meeting nights, and I can go to school take those evening classes. So I think I convinced myself, and I told myself the narrative, I want to go to the Spanish congregation, but it allowed me to go now to my graduate classes at night.
Mhm.
And then I went in the daytime to the Spanish field service, and I wasn't speaking Spanish then, but I learned Spanish really quickly, and they put me in I was working at that point. I was working. I had graduated, was working. I switched over to the Spanish congregation, but I still had to do graduate work.
Mhm.
And I had a car. And so I was taking all the older sisters all over field service. I mean, we had the whole entire city at that time. And
Wow.
I helped them build the territory, make territory cards because they would do the phone book, and then we started doing door-to-door field service. And so I saw that grow, and I thought, wow, I'm part of this big old foreign congregation in my own little neighborhood. And, I was feeling pretty cool. And and then one of the families adopted me, and I became best
Wow.
friends with one of the sisters there, and we became best buds. And they just treated me like family. I mean, even
You
more
were
so,
you were
it
like
was
the
just great.
granddaughter, daughter that everyone wanted. You
Yeah.
were
And
pioneering, you were educated, you were a smart woman. I mean, what not to love?
but I really couldn't say, I was like, oh, I work in the school. I would never say, I have a mat. I would never tell my degree. I would never tell anything. You have to kind of keep that on the low, you know. But I had my summers off. I had 2 weeks in December, I had 1 week in the spring, and so I had lots of time to be with the congregation. You know, I kept busy. I worked, and then I would go out and fill service after work with the brothers and sisters who wanted to do evening witnessing. I'd get home at 9 or 10, and then or we'd go and eat something later on in the car group. They were so social. It was time in the Spanish. I love the Spanish congregation. They were so sweet, so loving. Everybody was like just, Hermana Laura, and the little ones. I adopted the little ones, take them out to ice cream. Because I was single, living at home, making really good money,
Of course.
and and so I treated the young ones. Let's go buy, school clothes. Let's go do this. Let's go to the
Wow.
movie. It
Wow.
was fun. I enjoyed it. I really
Wow.
enjoyed it.
So then that brings you into like your early to mid 20s at this point.
Yeah, my mid-20s. But what I did notice in the Spanish congregation was that everybody, by the time they were 13, already hooked up, had their claws into another brother.
Oh,
If a brother came in and was just, if a guy came in and just studied, I mean, they were vultures. And these
wow.
women were beautiful. And I was a little bit overweight when I went into the Spanish congregation, but my best buddy and I decided we wanted to go on a cruise. So we were going to go on a cruise together. So we started losing weight. We started running the lake. We started, exercising, and we both got down. She was not heavy, but she got really thin, beautiful. And I got down to where I was muscular. I was running marathons, and
Wow.
you never know now, but I was running marathons, and and I would run. So a lot of times some of the brothers in Spanish congregation would say, oh, I want to run with you. And I said, sure. So we'd meet in the morning, and we'd go run, but they couldn't handle it because I was running like, 6 miles, and they were like, they would want to stop after, and then let's go eat. And I was realizing they were kind of checking me out. And I was like, I was not interested in the brothers. I think I looked at the leftover options, and I'm like, because the beautiful, pretty sisters hooked up the brothers right away. And I think this one brother I had a crush on, I found out he was married, and I just went, oh, like, oh, he's married, but his wife was an unbeliever and she never came to the meetings. But I was so in love with him. I was like, oh,
Wow.
he's so handsome. Will he notice me? Will he notice me? Will he notice me? But he didn't, because he was married. And one day he came in with his wife and his kid, and I was like, what the heck? What? I mean, he never, flirted with me or anything, but I was like, wow, that there goes my life. So I started, I had a job, had work, I was in a congregation I loved, and I wanted companionship. I saw everybody, having somebody,
Of course.
and I was lonely. I was young. I had feelings, I had needs, and so my sister also she worked at the JC college that I had went to. So I would go, visit her, and we'd hang out, we'd have lunch together. It was close to where I worked. So, and we also knew a couple of people that we knew from my sister's family. They were working there too. And it turned out that I had a crush on one of the people that was friends of the family. And he tried to get me to get involved with his brother-in-law. And he was started to be my running coach because he was a
Mhm.
marathon runner. So he would give me schedules, but I found myself, spending more time. I'd go visit my sister, and then while she was getting ready to, she had another half hour, I'd go run over to him and talk to him. And eventually, he got me to be more more in shape and running. And I had a crush on him. And then around that time, I was dealing with my own feelings, sexual feelings, things. And it was really due to, I I was like, why can't I just be around a guy? Why am I so nervous around a guy? Why, I want to have a relationship, and I would just get these fearful feelings anytime anybody in the congregation gave me attention in the English or in the Spanish. I mean, I would turn around and go the other way, except that one brother I had a crush on. And because he didn't want me, like, so I looked for the unavailable, because that was safe.
Of course. Of course.
And of course, and in the meantime, I was just doing some exercise at home, listening to her talk radio, and this lady came on and was talking about sexual abuse. And I listened, and it resonated with me. And she said, it maybe, she was talking to somebody, and she said, get therapy, so I called into the radio station and talked to her, and she
Wow.
said, let me give you some numbers. And she gave me some numbers, and I was working. So I hooked up with this therapist, and I was in therapy for almost 2 or 3 years with her,
Wow.
dealing
Wow.
with sexual abuse that I had when I experienced when I was young.
Wow.
And so she worked me through a lot of that sexual abuse and feelings. And that's when my whole, sexuality started to bloom.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I wanted to be intimate with somebody.
Of
And
course.
lo and behold, there was that man that was unavailable.
Was it the brother in the Kingdom Hall with the kid, or was it the worldly
No,
guy?
no, 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 I realized he was off limits, but this other guy, I didn't have to be goody goody. And
Exactly.
I made the first step. I told him I had a crush on you,
Oh, wow.
and he was married,
Okay. Okay.
and he kind of, you know, said, but I know he was attracted to me, you
Mhm.
know, and I remember he was like, let me think about it. But, I was always around him, flirting my eyes and everything. And, prior to that, when I was dealing with the therapist, I realized I needed to move out and get my own life. So I moved out. And so now I had my own, I had motive, I had intention. I had my own apartment. I was making my own money. I was living by myself. I was in the Spanish congregation. There was this available guy. So, I
So
was
the rest is history.
very, very intentional. We had an affair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How long did that last?
About a year.
Okay.
And then I decided, I started to really fall in love with him. And
Mhm.
thank God he said, no, we can't do this. We can't do this anymore. And so I got really upset and went into depression about it. I was still with my therapist and, and then worked through that. And then I went to the brothers in the Spanish congregation and told them I had an affair. I
Okay.
confessed.
Well,
And
yes.
and because it was Hermana Laura, the sweet little the Jew,
Of course.
they put me on, and they did ask the question. They tried to ask me more details, and I'm like, there was 3 brothers in my apartment, and I'm telling them I had an affair, and with a married man, and these all brothers are married, and you could see them like, oh, you know, this sister, and I'm talking to them, and they're asking me. They started to ask me details, but I don't want to do something. I don't want to do something.
Right.
And I told them, um, you guys are men, and I don't feel comfortable telling you these things. Let's just leave it at that. I had an affair. They're like,
Exactly.
and they're like, and I'm like, I was basically saying, I take the fifth. No, I gave you enough information.
Exactly.
And I was really sorry. I said I broke it off. I want nothing to do with him. I realized it was wrong. And and I remember, they had me. They went outside. They came back and they said, since nobody in the congregation, knows, we're going to put you on private reproof.
Mm.
And I was like, whew, I and so nobody knew, but I knew, and I couldn't comment. And I think my best buddy, I didn't tell her nothing. And I think she kind of figured, but she didn't quite, you know, but then, but I think I came off the pioneer list.
Mm.
Um, and so then all of a sudden my best friend was getting married, and I was in her. Eventually I got back, I got off proof, and she got married, and we did her whole dance routine in front of my apartment on the garage, and neighbors were watching us, and there was a big witness to this is how we do it and all that stuff. And and then she got married, and we went on the cruise before she got married.
Okay.
And she had an adventure no, on the cruise.
I can imagine.
But the thing is, when you're when you have sexual abuse young, a lot of times you don't understand your boundaries, and you know, and you don't
Absolutely.
know when to say no, you don't understand that. And I actually went with the DJ. He said he wanted to get some music, and he took me all the way down to the boat where he is, where you're not supposed to take anybody.
Mm.
And I remember him going and getting a sandwich. I'm so naive because this is when I was a virgin, you know, in a
Wow.
sense. And so I'm following him like a little puppy, you know, and when I think about it, man, I could have been raped on this cruise.
Absolutely.
But so
Wow.
we sit down in his room, he's looking through his CDs, and he has a sandwich, and I'm thinking, why do you get a sandwich? We're just gonna go get the CD, you know. And so I guess, and plus I didn't know how to be intimate with anybody in that sense. So I'm like, you know, I'm like, and he's talking to me, he's giving all these things that are just going over my head. You know, I don't know what he's talking about. You know, I have no clue. So I'm, you know, I'm like, well, okay, so let's go back up. You know, so we went back up, nothing happened. And when I look back, I'm like, holy moly, you know, you, you could have gotten raped,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
but I didn't. And then after that, I realized I need to be intimate with somebody. And I was like 27, and I'm like, you're a virgin at 27. Come on, you have a job, you're working, you're this, and you don't know what it is to be intimate with a man, you know,
But
or to have a male relationship.
this was before their affair?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we finished the
At
cruise in the,
27, wow.
yeah, I was 1 week before I turned 28, and I said, darn it, I'm gonna have sex before, before I turn 28.
Wow, wow.
And I was like, you're gonna be it, you know. And I did, you know, and he was sweet, and I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and it wasn't, you know, and he didn't know, I mean, he didn't know I didn't know what I was doing. He just thought I was being cute and quaint, and I was like, you know. So then he had to come back and show me what we need to do. And so he was I hate to say this, he was married, and you know, I take full responsibility. I should have never done it. But on the other hand, he taught me how to be sexual. He taught me how to be intimate.
Mm,
He taught me about my body. He taught me to feel comfortable about my body. He taught me, you know, he was a great lover. He was just a
mm,
fantastic lover.
mm. That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, and so I was good with that, you know. And then he did his job, you know, teaching me, and it wasn't a bad experience. It was a beautiful experience. And then he was out of my life, and then I was like, oh, but I want him back, you know, after I got reproved and got
Of course.
reinstated. I like, you know, so I tried, we initiated it a little bit again, but then I decided, nah, you know, that stage has ended. And so I broke up.
Okay.
And so yeah,
You broke off this 1 year affair, and then you got reinstated or got all of your privileges back. So now you're 28 years old, and
I
you
was 20, I was 28. I was 28 years old when I had the affair. And it really lasted for like 2.5 years because we broke up,
wow.
and then we got back together. But
Okay.
when I broke up the first time, I told the elders. The second time I didn't tell them.
Okay.
I broke up on my own. I said, I already got reproved for that. It's the same thing, same crime. I already got my punishment ahead of time. I'm done. You know, and I started to fade a little bit.
Okay.
Hold on. So so then I went from there, and then I was still working. I had a best friend that lived next door to me, and she was really good, and she just taught me about the world. She was so sweet, and she was not a witness, and she understood I was a witness that first year I lived in that apartment. And she saw me all busy going up and down and going out service, being this sweet little girl. And then she saw me coming of age during that time. And she loved me throughout, unconditional love. And I'm still besties with her now. We would weave in and out, you know, and I would fade a little bit. And then but not quite, you know, I started to do like Kingdom Hall jumping. And you know, and moved back to my mom's house at some point because I didn't want to work where I was working, and I quit my job and then realized I ran out of savings. And so I moved back in with my mom, and she, you know, so I had to go to the meetings. And so I went to her Kingdom Hall, and we went there for a little bit. And then I met my husband now. And when I met him, I wanted to move out of the house again because I wanted to I want to have a relationship with him.
Of
And he was not
course.
a witness. So yeah, lo and behold, I saved my money up, I paid some bills, I put a little chunk down. We put the money for an apartment. He came and moved in a different apartment, and I was living with my mom, but we had that place, and eventually we moved into that place. And but my mom didn't know we moved together in that place. She thought he still had his apartment. And she would say, so when he's going back to you know, when's he going back? When's he, because he came from Orange County. When's he going back? And I'm like, I don't know. When's he going back? And we got married. And then we got married and ready to have a son. Didn't know he was a son at that time. And so I was like 6, 7 months pregnant. And I thought, okay, now I have a baby. I was still uh, physically out, but mentally in, because I still believed it was the truth.
Mhm.
And but I also realized I didn't want to go to the meeting if I was sinning,
Mm.
because I didn't want a bad reputation on Jehovah's name. I didn't want to put a reproach on his name. But I also thought, I don't believe in the Catholic religion, any other religion, none of those, Baptist, none of these. I'm not an atheist. I want to raise my kid, because I remember being raised to love the Bible, love God. And then I had really good experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses. Never had a completely horrible. I saw things, but didn't make sense till I got out.
Mm.
And because I pushed that stuff back, but nothing really horrible happened to me, being a witness. But I thought, I need to raise my kid. I want something much higher in terms of, it's not me saying it. It's, God of the universe telling us how to live our life, that moral compass. Didn't realize I could have my own moral compass.
Mm.
It had to be this moral compass. And so I wanted to raise it. And my husband, who had been raised around family that were witnesses, he was okay with me doing whatever, going in, going out, doing this, not doing it, going to the meetings, not going to the meetings, raising my kid a witness, sure, it didn't matter. It just saw it as this religion,
Mhm.
that people like a Catholic, they come and go, because he was never raised religiously.
Mhm.
He was raised around it, his grandpa and grandma. And so he said, yeah, you can go back. I said, I want to go back. I want to, you know, raise my son in the religion. He says, okay, what do you want to do? So he accepted me the way I was. If I
Wow.
wanted to be hot or cold, it didn't matter.
Wow.
And so I ended up going to the brothers, but I had to go, I didn't know what to do, but I realized I had to go to the brothers, and I had to talk to them, and they said, um, you're disfellowshipped. I went, I told them,
Wow.
I told him, I thought I was going in like David, King David, you did your wrong, you confess, but God will still forgive you. But no, I went in, I did my wrong, I confessed, and you're out of here.
That's what happened to me too. So I understand. So you said you were married now, you had a kid, and you got disfellowshipped.
I was still pregnant. I was in there, pregnant. I walked into the judicial,
Yeah, that.
just round as a ball.
And how long had it been since you were active before?
Maybe about 2 years. Because when I moved out of my mom's house, and
Okay,
and
got it.
yeah, and I was about a year with George.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, you got disfellowshipped, and how are you feeling after that?
Well, I had called my mom, and I told her, she knew I was pregnant. She knew I wasn't married at that time, and that then we had gotten married. And then she said, at that time you were told you need to go to the elders. And she did talk to me, and she said, well, you think at some point you need to go to the elders. And I said, okay, I will, Mom, I will.
Of
And then
course.
when I called her, I said, Mom, I'm going to the elders. I'm going to talk to them. I know I don't know, I'll take whatever they give me, disfellowship, private reproof, um, whatever it is, I'll take it. And I'm going to be a witness now, because I want to raise my kid. And she said, okay. So she was cool with that. And it was interesting,
Okay.
because when they disfellowshipped me, um, I would still go over to my mom's house, and she didn't talk spiritual, but she still loved me. I still had coffee and
Oh,
donuts at her house. We still had Sundays at her house, and
wow.
George came, and but she didn't talk spiritual with me, because that's at the time, that's how you pretty much thought of it. You don't really kick your kid out to the corner and ignore them. And people would come and pick up my mom for field service, because she was still a pioneer. I had stopped pioneering, and they would say hello to me. They would greet me. Hello. One
Wow.
time spiritual. They
Wow.
would say hi to my son, and they would
Wow.
say hi to him. Oh, he's so big. He's getting so big. I said, yeah. So I would talk to him. It was at some point that I think there was some new light that you have to totally abandon your kid, and that came a
Isn't
little
that
bit,
new light great? That new light is just so great.
yeah, an adjustment in thinking.
Of course, of course. So from
So
one
yeah,
second you were disfellowshipped and they could greet you and stuff like that, to the next second you couldn't, you were shunned. But at this point, were you reinstated?
no. So I went with my mom to the circuit assembly when my son was maybe 3 months,
Okay.
and I was disfellowshipped. So nobody
So,
talked to me, but everybody just looked at me. Everybody smiled at me, because I was like the model. Like, how in the world did she get to this point? What happened? Because they knew me as the sweet Laura, and then
yeah.
a kid, you know. But I'm like, I was married.
Yeah. Exactly.
So and then I went, and then my husband said, we lived in another city. He says, I want you to go to the congregation there. And I said, okay. So I went there, and I didn't know anybody. And so I just walked in one day, and I started talking to it was an Italian brother. He thought I was from the Spanish congregation. He spoke Spanish to me. I spoke Spanish back to him. And we were talking, and then I told him I was disfellowshipped. He goes, oh. And so I sat down, and it was almost about a year with my son, because I didn't know what you do next. I thought they would come up to me and say, we see you. Do you want to get? So I'm sitting there like, la, 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 with my kid every day.
Oh my gosh.
And finally I said, maybe I should ask them what to do next.
Right.
So I asked them, and they go, oh, you need to write a letter. And I said, oh, I missed that in the organization book. I missed that paragraph. So,
Oh boy.
so I went ahead and wrote, and then they got it. And then later, and then I'm waiting, like Jeopardy, ding, ding, ding. And then finally we land up, I go back and I said, what's going on? They said, oh, you have to send it to the congregation you were disfellowshipped. I'm like, no kidding. So he says, I'm trying to get a hold of the brother there. And so it was just one step after another. But they weren't like rushing it. And I didn't care, I was cool. But in the meantime, because the brothers and sisters were looking at me, and they were offering to watch my son so I can study, pay attention to the meeting. But my husband was saying, don't let nobody touch him. Don't let anybody take him. I'm like, okay. And I was like, oh no, my husband. It was always I learned from the beginning, oh, my husband said no, and they're like, okay. Oh, my husband, I'll talk with my husband. See, no, he doesn't feel, no, and I think that became my loophole. And I think that's why I was attracted to the men who were not witnesses, because that was
Nice.
always my loophole.
Of course, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
And so I was reinstated. But prior to that, there was brothers that would come around, like sisters, older sisters, and they would just, as I was walking through, they'd grab my shoulder like this, and squeeze it and look at me and smile and say, keep going. And so they talked to me. They talked to me. So I didn't feel lonely.
wow.
I'm like,
Wow.
they're rooting for me. They want me to be a witness again. I don't know these people. And the minute I got reinstated, everybody was, I was love bombed again, all over again. But you could see that they wanted to love bomb me, but they couldn't. They wanted to. You could just see it in their eyes and how they approached me. They walked past me and put their hand on my back. And so I already felt welcomed, even as a disfellowship person. I felt welcomed.
Wow. Wow. And then at this point, your son was like 1?
He was about 1, maybe,
Okay.
yeah, a little bit. But little did I know I was pregnant with my second daughter, with my second child, my
Wow.
daughter.
Wow.
So they gave me the biggest baby shower you could imagine.
Wow.
I mean, it was huge. We had a van at the time. We had and we had 2 trips. I mean, it was so much stuff they gave. My daughter didn't need clothes until she was 5. That's how much.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, she had clothes, and she had Kingdom Hall clothes. She had regular clothes. I mean, she had everything.
Wow. Wow.
She,
They really
yeah.
spoiled you.
Yeah, they just treated, I mean, and they were like that the whole time I was in the congregation. I had a third kid. We raised my kids in the congregation. They love bombed them. They love my kids. They watched them. They were sweet to them. They were sweet to me. I was very active. I was one of the active people in the congregation. So I was always invited to this, invited to that. But a lot of times I had to decline because somebody always had just one kid, but I had 3 kids we had to pay for. And it was like, this is kind of getting expensive. I can't do everything, and then I was working full time.
Okay. Wow. 3 kids, husband not a Jehovah's Witness. You were taking all the kids to the Kingdom Hall, and your husband
Mhm.
was okay with that?
Yeah, he was okay with it. Yeah,
Okay.
he'd sometimes give me a ride, or if uh, there was occasions when I was sick and he'd go take them. He was Mr. Social. They always he's a witness just ready to happen. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna be a witness. You know, I've seen the hypocrisy, Laura.
Good,
I'm like,
good,
"You
good
just
for
quit
him
right
for not.
congregation." You know,
Good for him for never ever taking the bait of being a
no,
JW.
he never did. He goes, I gotta be a soldier. If I need to protect you, he says, I can't be hiding under a Bible. I remember one time he went and he would come to the assemblies because because but I remember one time there was this guy, I guess he was doing shouting out. We were sitting up on the top of a district convention, and this guy came out and started screaming. You could hear him. And all of a sudden, all the brothers surrounded him and almost floated him out. And I told George, see, you could be one of those soldiers. You can see, no violence.
Wow, wow.
He goes, no.
So then what perpetuated between you having 3 kids to you leaving the organization? We're jumping now like 20 years into the future.
Well, it was
But
around, well, it was like midway in those 20 years. Uh, my sister passed away, and she was still living with my mom and supporting my mom. My mom was pioneering, and she passed away. She's 4 years older than me. And when she passed away, my mom didn't have an income. And so my mom, at that time, was starting to fade again, starting to fade a little because it was a lot working full time, raising 3 kids. And I would get exhausted, especially with the winter when they would get sick. One would get sick, the other one get sick, the other one get sick. I'd be like hit missing. Home with my husband, I'd go to the meeting, I'd come back, go to work, feeling a lot of guilt not being there, either work or at the meetings. And if I missed, there was this perpetual self-guilt that they teach you. You teach yourself to feel guilty, and then when they really bring it up, you feel super guilty. And so you try to avoid, not dodging their looks or their comments. And I ended up missing a few meetings. But of course, when you're reinstated, they attach you to another pioneer who studies with you to reindoctrinate you, make sure you know the right answers, and keep you strong to build your spirituality. No, to indoctrinate you, to make sure,
exactly.
And so she called me and she said, I'm watching American Idol, and she calls me after the meeting. I'm like, oh, American Idol. And George goes, oh, she's watching American Idol. I'm like, oh my God, Idol.
Of course. Of course.
I've been caught. So next meeting I'm there. And then my mom, I'm like slightly fading, but didn't know it was called fading. And then my sister died, and my mom moved in with us. And so my mom had Parkinson's. And so it was hard because that's when it became extremely hard. Because now in the evening, whatever evening time I had, it was now divvied between my husband, my children, and my mom, who needed a lot of attention. And then the weekends. So I was also taking her out field service, helping her get ready, helping my kids get ready. And it took a toll on me. It was stressful, stressful, stressful. And I became this, I used to call myself, you want to be the nice mom? You want to be the mean mom? I can talk to you nicely, or I can talk mean to get your butt up and out in service,
Wow.
and
So you were still
that
trying
was a lot of
to
guilt.
you were still trying to raise your kids in the organization,
Yeah,
handling with your mom and then your husband as well. So that was a lot of work. How did you keep
yeah.
up with all that?
I don't know. You just do it. My mom used to have this saying, just do it. I said, oh, you got the Nike commercial before he was popular, you know. So I just did it.
How long
I
did your
followed,
mom live
I
with
followed.
you?
She lived with us until 2011. She broke her hip and then had to have an operation. And then a few weeks later in the rehab, she died.
Okay.
But
During
what
those
happened was, as I was
during-
fading,
Mhm. No, I was asking during those years she was living with you, you guys were going to the same congregation?
we were going to my congregation, and they totally embraced her. They loved her because she was a pioneer, and
Yes.
they just loved her. My mom had an outgoing personality, and she was a little, she had a saying for everything. She had a way of talking. She was
Mm.
quick-witted, and so they all loved her.
Okay.
And when she, yeah, so they embraced her. And when they would go to Pioneer, like that special circuit overseer, she would go into the Pioneer meeting. I would
Mhm.
go to Safeway and open up the trunk, and I'd have chicken, and I have mashed potatoes, and I'd have,
Oh my
all this stuff, and I'd
gosh.
open it up with some paper plates. So when they got out, they would all get a plate and eat. That's the way my mom was. She taught us, because when I grew up as witnesses, we lived by the hall. So people would always come after the meeting to our house. We always had cookies and coffee, and my mom was gonna cook lunch. She'd cook lunch, and everybody came, ate. My mom was very giving, and 100%, I'll take care of you.
So then in 2011, when she broke her hip and went to the hospital, what happened? Because you said she passed away shortly after. You
Yeah, she
said you were
passed.
also fading a little bit?
No, I was fading before my sister died. And then she
Okay.
came to our house, and then I had to
You guys
I
are
had to get her to a
isolated.
meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
even
Okay.
times I was totally exhausted, where I would normally miss the meeting, I would tell George, I'm really tired, I can't do it. And he goes, then just rest. And but my mom was at the door with her book bag. I'm ready to
Like
go.
waiting for you. Wow.
And I'm like, okay. So sometimes I would take the kids, and sometimes I would just take her, because I didn't have the energy. And then I'd come back, and I'd be so exhausted. And I was just really tired. And I was like, I don't know if I could do this anymore. And then when my mom passed away, I was taking my kids still, and it was really hard. And but I but I think in a way I felt obligated, emotionally obligated, because when my sister died, we didn't know what to do. And they called me and they said, how are you doing? And I said, I don't know what to do. I've never had anybody die or figure it out. And they said, give us a minute. And the sister said, I'm going to talk to the elders. With 30 minutes, they had everything arranged. They were going to go to my sister's. They had food, everything. And my sister, you think it was a witness to her. She's not a
Yeah.
witness,
Yeah.
but she gave them the key, and they fixed up her house. They fixed up the backyard. They put tablecloths. They got it all ready, like like an assembly. And
Wow.
they brought her paper goods, and she had to not lift a finger. And
Wow.
we went to the funeral. We came back, and there were sisters already serving other sisters, everybody coming in. And so I was grateful for that. And then another time my husband got sick in Modesto, or we are on our way to a wedding, and he got sick, and they were ready to come and pick us up and take us back, with my kids. And then when my mom got sick, they were there helping me when she ended up going to the rehab. She fell twice. They were there every day watching her. She came home when I couldn't take care of her, they came in for almost 3 or 4 days and brought in two sisters every 4 hours watching her while I go to work and figure it out. They were there for me every single step. There was a crisis. They used to call us the Job family, because we always had a horrible crisis. And then I landed
Wow.
up in the hospital because I had a medical condition that just kind of hit me.
Wow.
And that was just before my mom passed away. It was the summer. She passed in October. That summer, I got really, really sick and was in the hospital for 10 days. They brought my family meals. And
Wow.
my mom was in a rehab because she was still healing from her fall. And so they visit her they've never left her alone in those rehabs. When she was in the hospital, she always had visitors. They loved us. They totally loved us. Even beyond the love bombing, they were family to us, and they were my kids' family.
I mean, it sounds like an idyllic kind of JW story where you were just getting love and supported by so many people. So what actually got you out of it, especially when you were feeling like this deep sense of community, family, all that stuff?
Well, my kids, because of so many crises we had in our life, my kids weren't baptized yet, and they were hitting like 15, 16, 17.
Mhm.
And my other son had also went through that same, when my mom died, he broke his neck. And so the brothers and sisters rallied around us too, again, to support him and visit him. And so we had so many crises and so much support. But then when we kind of got over that support, all those crises, and we had a moment to breathe and just be regular at the meeting and just be a regular family, I thought, well, my kids need to think about getting baptized. I thought through osmosis, they would be witnesses. And I
Yeah,
realized I really have to study the book with them, not just
right,
have family studies. And
right.
so I thought, well, I can't teach my son to be a brother. So I asked one of the elders that were closest, can you study with my son? I'll study with my daughter. So we did. When it came to getting ready to get baptized I think it was at the district assembly, my son didn't want to do it. And I would ask why. And he's like, I don't know. why? But I didn't push. But I'm like, why? You know, just tell me the reason why. Like, oh, and my daughter says, I want to get baptized, you know. And I'm like, are you? And then I realized she was getting baptized because her friends. And I said, are you sure? You know, are you sure this is what you want to do? It's a lifetime commitment, you know. And yes, 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 yes. So she got baptized. The year she got baptized, she went into high school. And she was like, finished 8th grade, went into high school. And for her, that's when she woke up. And and then she didn't want to be a witness. Within a year and a half after getting baptized, she didn't want to be a witness. She didn't tell me, but she eventually worked it out. She was writing journals. She said that I thought she was taking notes at the meeting. She was writing all the counter arguments.
Oh my gosh, what a smart
And I'm like,
girl.
oh, my girl's writing a journal. No, she's writing her notes.
What a smart girl. Takes after her mom, all the note taking.
So she let it up. Eventually she gave me a letter, and it shocked me to, you know, it just shocked me because I could see some changes in her, but finally she gave me a letter. She thought that I was going to dump her out because I think she had witnessed the family's video where your daughter is up on that canopy and left to hang, and the mom's, you know, looking at her cell phone. She gets a message and she puts it down, you know, and you know, and I remember thinking, you know, what if she, you know, what if she, because I was thinking, what if her car breaks down, or what if this happens, or what if, you know, she's homeless, whatever, you know. No one even, they're just sad that she's not a witness. They're not worried what's happening to her. That was not the expression I saw at the video. And it was quiet when that played. It got quiet. You know, I think people were saying, what the heck? But nobody, it was a mass cognitive dissonance.
Wow.
I witnessed. And I was like, I'm looking around, I'm like, everybody's not comfortable with this. We all got to act like we like it. And at the end, they're like,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, okay, this is not good, you know?
Wow.
And I thought about that at the point where she told me she wanted to be a witness. I'm like, oh, I gotta, you know, but I'm thinking, my loop, my catch 22. George will never kick her out. But she was so adamant, I'm moving out. I'm going to get in the dorms. I'm blah, blah, blah. You know, and I already said, okay, she's going to move out. She's going to get in the dorms. We can't stop her. And the thing is, I got my master's degree. How can I tell my daughter, you know, you need to go to vocational school and get secretarial or learn how to, you know, stamp papers or something.
No.
I thought I was never discouraging them, but I wasn't encouraging them. But, you know, conversation with my daughter, she said, you did a lot of things, Mom, that discouraged me. So I was afraid to even say I wanted to go to school, you know, but right when she realized she wasn't going to get kicked out, she decided to stay home. And I was like, phew, she's home, you know. But during that time, we had a lot of, because I was still a witness, we were like crashing each other. She called me a demon spawn, which crushed me.
What a great name, a demon spawn.
Yeah. I'm like, it hurt me to the core, you know. I don't know what, you know. And so a lot of times I was like, she goes, I called you that. I said, yeah, I had to delete your text right there because I couldn't look at it again. So she ended up you know, telling me, and she had mentioned something about the Royal Commission, and I kind of looked at it a little bit, but I had actually got online and I'd looked at something one time a while back, and it was, I think before it was John Cedar, but it was like a blog, and I was reading it, but I stopped looking at it because we're not supposed to look at it, but also because he had a beard. I'm like, oh heck no. I'm not reading. He has a beard. But so I was like, you know, I couldn't take it. I told her to go to the brothers, and she talked to them, and then they said she has to write a disassociation letter, and she put it on a little dirty index card, said, I don't want to be a witness, Julie.
literally that's all she said. I don't want to be a witness, Julie. Wow.
After she met with them, they still wanted, because it wasn't a judicial meeting yet, it was two brothers meeting with her. And did it all nice and handed it to them. He opened the thing. The next meeting, they announced it, and everybody was hugging on me. And the biggest thing I didn't like was that the sisters who I knew had disfellowshipped children, they were all coming to me, and I thought, they're all in their 80s and I'm not in my 80s. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm now part of the Disown Your Children's Mothers Club. And I'm like, I don't want to be this way 20, 30 years from now, crying at every meeting because they were so sad over denying their children. And I thought, I don't want to be that. And then it just bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. And I had a friend that came to visit me, and I kind of shared, she was a witness from a different city. And I said, I feel like I can't have gatherings here anymore, that because we were popular. Everybody came to our backyard, everybody had barbecues, I always had people over the house. I said, I can't do this because I don't want to see somebody look at my daughter like she doesn't exist.
Mm.
I said, and I feel like I'm mourning her every day. And the sister was really cool. She goes, Lord, they're going to have to say, no, it's your house. They can't be rude to her. It's your house. But I thought, I know though, but I can't stand somebody, it's my baby. Somebody treats my baby like that, it's going to hurt me to the core. I don't care. She's going to school. She's smart. She's getting straight A's. She's not doing anything horrible. But then everybody has to not talk to her. I'm like, she's not doing anything she shouldn't be doing as a kid, as an 18, 19-year-old going to school. So that bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. And finally, one day we were off. I think we were off like November break. And I opened it up. I said, I'm going to start looking at the Bible, Jehovah's name. And I started looking at the inside of the Bible, studying who Jehovah's name was from their Bible, and looking up things and looking up that, and then looking up that name. And then I came back to Cedar's channel, and I came back to Critical Thinking. I really enjoyed them because they remind me of my car, the ones I grew up around. So I started listening to them, and then but Cedar's helped me understand some of the origin and some of the contradictions and those kinds of things. And the Critical Thinking helped me to understand the culture that's there, the unwritten rules and stuff. And so I realized, oh my God. And then finally I thought, I did my own research. I said, okay, it's a cult, which I didn't want to use the word cult yet, but it's a high control group that was once so it started out as a guy who broke off, and and he made false predictions because he was using some kind of pyramid and some kind of numerology that he borrowed from somebody else. And then he created a group, and then Rutherford came in, said, you're dead, I'm taking over, it's a coup. I'm going to create this publishing company because I have legal, hearsay there. And then he said, oh, I got to change it because everybody should be up in heaven now. So there's a great crowd, let me change that. And then another prediction, then it turned into a cult, like a fringe religion, a Christian religion, and then it became a cult. But the entirety, it was a publishing company. So it was a publishing company turned into a cult, religious cult. And I thought, oh my God, that's why they never changed the word publisher. We're their peons. It's that pyramid.
Wow.
We're the peons doing all the legwork, and they're sitting there high on the fat.
I had no idea about the story until you just said that. So wow, what a insightful thing that you just told me. So interesting.
Yeah, and I went back and studied, well, Christians, who is Jesus? Who is Judaism? Where did it start? Where did Abraham start? He was, in Chaldea. He was a Chaldean. Okay, there's even scriptures that talk about these idols that they had. Rachel sat on one and said she was on her period. Don't look there, Dad. So, I remember reading this whole Bible reading with my daughter, and I said, she was sitting, she put this statue that was an idol that they used for inheritance. That was her claim to fame. And they were trying to get rid of it. She put it in this basket and sat. That's where they would sit when they would have their period and bleed. So it's in the Bible. It's right there. And she's telling her dad says, like, where did you know where it's at? And she goes, and she's telling her, it's not here. Look where I am. Leave me alone. Go. And he goes, okay. And you're like, okay, I'm not touching that. You know how guys do when you say, tampons or something.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, so he walked away. But she was hiding her inheritance. But where they say they got to get rid of all the idols. So they had multiple idols, and then I read Job and said, well, Jehovah talked to Satan right among his congregation. They were in assembly, and he's all talking to him, and all the people are just talking and chit-chatting, all the angels. And I'm like, But yet we got to say, and Jesus talked to the lepers and talked to all these people. I'm like, where does it say I got to disown my daughter? You know, when if she calls on the cell phone, we got to get rid of her. And I said, I couldn't do that. I said, oh, no, 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 no. They're teaching me not to have this motherly instinct that God put in me. And, God put this, why did God put a motherly instinct in me to turn around and say, she's dead? Well, I didn't buy the scripture that said, well, if she was in the Israel time, she would have been dead. Okay, well, that Israel time, they got rid of all that stuff. So that's no principle there, So I said, I can't do that. And I woke up and I had then I was off for winter break and I went into a rabbit hole. I went, and at night I would just read everything. In daytime I was like cracked eyes, still trying to read, drinking coffee and like delusional and just reading. I went through 2 weeks. And then I had to realize I'm in a cult. Holy crap. I cannot believe this. I've been duped. I'm getting ready to retire soon. My whole life is gone. I taught my kids to be in a cult. I screwed up their life. Oh my God, I got to tell everybody. So I finally told my husband first. And then I said, how am I going to tell him? Because his family have been witnesses in and out. How am I going to tell him? I think I did. I can't remember. I think I told him. And he was like, yeah, it is. I'm like, well, why'd you let me be in it? He said, well, that's what you wanted to do. I'm not going to stop you. I told you. But it was like, and then I told my oldest son, he says, I never thought you would leave it. Wow. It's I'm atheist. Oh, okay. And then I told my daughter, and she said, wow, you finally figured it out, Mom. And I'm like, yeah. And then finally I told my son, because he was still going with me to the meetings at that time. And then after that, I think I went last time to the memorial, and I and I thought, wow, they're actually denying the sacraments. I was like, this is a Satan religion. I'm like, but I said, whatever it is, I don't care anymore. I had no feelings. I had totally cleansed myself of the teachings, but I was still feeling real guilty and kind of searching there. And over time, I got into the XJW groups on Facebook. And then I came across your announcement saying you had this class because I was thinking about going to other classes, but I'm like, because I feel much more comfortable talking to a female and, and an XJW doing coaching. It was a perfect fit for me. I said, I can afford this, and so I said, let me try it, take this class and I took it and I was like, you would ask these really simple questions. I'm like, then I was like, what the heck? Why am I feeling these feelings? Why? This is deep. And I get all hot and I type away, and I type away. I said, I can't answer this. I type away. And it's just a simple question, a simple little question that just triggered a floodgate because it was around my guilt that I hadn't really gotten rid of around my children. And so you and I talked as a preliminary, and I said, this is the issue that I'm dealing with. I love my kids and I feel like I screwed their life up. I felt like, because in those XJW groups, I would read all these things about these young kids saying how horrible it was being raised as a witness and how horrible it was, and how it screwed them up. And, some killed themselves because they couldn't, talk to their family. And I was like, oh my God, I did this to my kids. I did it to myself, but I was 13. I don't know what it's like. I know what it's like to have Christmas. I knew what it was like. So when it came back to celebrating, I'm like, turn off that switch, turn it back on, kind of thing. And my kids are like, okay, what's this? Where do we put it? There's too many celebrations, Mom. Too many holidays. Every other week it's somebody,
So what would you tell another parent right now who is dealing with that grief of raising their kids in their religion and now they're out?
Well, I think through the workshop, and really diving into that topic and reading articles and reading people who are experts on this and coaches like you that are experts on just digging into your feelings, I came to the conclusion that that there's really, I was mixing the two things, regret and guilt. What I did was I thought I was giving my kids the best choice under the best circumstances I could. I had a lot of things I was dealing with. And I was still trying to give them something to hold on to. I wanted them to live. I wanted them to have everlasting. I wanted them to have something better. And so that's what I was pushing for. And every mother, somebody wants to put their kids in something, they work hard for it because they're doing it for their kids. I was doing it for my kids. And that's the only reason why I really went back. But then all these things happened, my mom, my sister, and so it continued to perpetuate this need of community. And this was the only community I had, and it was very supportive. So maybe in the last 3 or 4 months, I've been working through, it's regret. Guilt, if I did it intentionally to hurt them, I didn't. It's regret that I took those steps. But, I could be proud to say that my kids have figured it out. They're working through it. I mean, we still have time and things to do, but it's getting better. I see it, we hit a plateau, it stays, gets better. And I think my kids are going to be fine. And I'm really happy for that. And my daughter just graduated with her bachelor's from Berkeley, magna cum laude. My 2 other sons, my oldest son is returning. He returned back to college because he was working, because he was the one that felt like he needed to work if he was going to go to school. And he went to work for a little bit, and then COVID happened, and he wants to come back and go get his degree. And he's still young enough to do that, early 20s. And then my youngest one never had to deal with, high school and homework and going to the meetings. He dedicated himself to high school, and was able to get like straight A's. And now his first year in college, just finished, straight A's. And he wants to be an astrophysicist and great with calculus. And I mean, they're living their life. And now I can tell them, I think the biggest difference, I couldn't celebrate their accomplishments, anything that was worldly. And now I celebrate them. I tell them, you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. You can, you want to go to the moon, you can go. Set that. There's nothing you can't do. And your dad and I will be here to support you. We will be here to cheerleader you. You could do what you want. It's your life. It's your life. You could be whatever you want. You could think whatever you want. You could be any gender you want. I mean, you could do anything you want. Because
with that support, anything is possible. So and I know that your relationship has just gotten so much better with them since you've just let yourself be that way to them. It's huge, huge, huge. I loved your story. It had so many bits and pieces that are just like so important. And I hope that the person that watches it the whole way through, because there's so much information for people to watch. Is there a last thing that you want to add to somebody who's watching this to the end that you want to say to somebody?
I think that you need to research. So you get the indoctrination out the way, but you also need to get the culture and how the culture has influenced you, because they're really good at teaching you to be your own big brother, and to keep perpetuating that. For me, what I landed up doing was, once I realized, and I loved all the brothers and sisters I was attached to, I landed up blocking them. I sent them texts when they would try to, we missed you at the meeting, but eventually I thought I can't go through the cycle. So I wrote a very generic thing saying so I wrote something that said, I need my space, I need my privacy. I put those keywords in there, and they pretty much got the message. And I know that they were like soft shunning me. They weren't, in COVID, they weren't coming over. So that was a great thing. But eventually I realized I can't have them. I got rid of them on my Facebook. I got rid of them on my phone. I deleted them because I said, I don't want them coming to me. I don't want to live by their rules. I understand. I'm not going to put myself in a position where they decide to shun me. I love them, but I had to let them go. So I think at a point, you get to this point where you need to let them go so you can find your own community. Until you let them go, you're never going to find your own community. And when I let them go, I deleted them. Once in a while I get a call because they might use a different number, but it shows their name up. I'm like, block. And I feel like, and I already have I scripted what I was going to say. I scripted what I wanted to say, and I practiced it. So if they ever come to the door, I know what to say. I'm going to say hello, but I don't need to tell my relationship what my spiritual relationship is. I don't have to answer nothing to nobody. And that's it. You know, you're a grown up. I used to tell myself, you're a grown ass woman. You don't have to talk to
Mhm,
me to tell you what to do.
mhm, mhm,
You don't have to. And the thing that I learned is that I make my decisions, and I can listen to people, I can take in their perspective, but I do everything because it's right for me.
mhm.
And and also too, if you were a caring person in the religion, you could still be a caring person outside the religion. You know,
You can be even more caring, actually.
yeah. And I mean, because I'm not judging, there's no secondary agenda.
Exactly.
How do I need to bring it around to a religious conversation? And I found that I'm accepting people more. I'm able to, all the things that I put on the back burner of how, that's who I was. So, you learn to be, it's amazing. I think the biggest thing that I found, I'm 60 years old, and I feel like at first I was feeling like I only got, 10, 20 years maybe. And I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I'm present right now, and every day is beautiful. I can do whatever I freaking want now, and if I want to go back to school, I can do it. If I don't, if I want to move to another country, I can do it. I can do whatever I want, and nobody can stop me, because there's a will. My mom used to say, there's a will, so that there's a way. Yeah. you know and if I just, I love waking up, having some warm beverage in the morning. Just yesterday, Sunday, and I told my husband, this is really nice, you appreciate those blessings. He's watching the race on TV. I didn't care, but I'm like, I could sit here and kind of eat my breakfast, and nibble on this and nibble on that, drink my warm beverage, and I'm like, I don't have to go to a meeting before I was rushing. You know, I don't have to rush, and I could be present now. I think that's the biggest thing. Uh, you learn to be present and not think there's always a future, there's always a paradise,
Mhm.
because right now is the best time. Right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally, totally, totally agree with you, Laura. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I so appreciate it. I'm going to hit end.